They said the night that boy was born, even the sky caught fire. Some children are born crying, others are born silent, but this one came into the world burning. In the heart of a small African village called Igbo, thunder cracked open the heavens. The rain stopped midair, and the wind carried the smell of something unnatural. Inside a small mud hut, a woman screamed in pain, while lightning struck 3 times in the same place. When the midwife came out, her hands trembled. In her arms was a baby whose skin shimmered with heat, whose breath left trails of smoke in the air. People gasped and stepped back in fear. "He is cursed," someone whispered. "He carries the anger of the god," another said. But the woman, Adawuni, looked into her child's fiery eyes and saw not anger, but light. She named him Adanju, the boy born of fire. Years passed, and Adawuni kept her son hidden from the eyes of the fearful. When the village slept, the boy would sneak out and sit under the whispering palms. Sometimes he'd draw shapes in the dirt, and small sparks would appear, dancing gently around his fingertips. The fire obeyed him. It moved when he wished. It flickered when he laughed. It never burned him. It loved him. But in Igbo, people feared what they didn't understand, and fear spreads faster than fire. Then came the season of dust, when the air was dry enough to crack your lips just by breathing. The crops were dying, and the wind carried whispers of doom. One night, a fire erupted in the fields. It grew fast, hungry, angry. By dawn, the flames had devoured the harvest, leaving nothing but smoke and ash. And before the air cleared, the villagers had already decided who was to blame: the fire child. They said his curse had finally consumed them. That night they came for him, torches in hand, eyes full of hatred. But no one noticed the irony. They came with fire to destroy the boy born of it. Adawuni begged them to stop. She cried. She fell to her knees before the chief, pleading for mercy. "He's just a child," she screamed. But the crowd had no heart left to listen. "Before he consumes us all," they said, "he must be cast out." As they dragged him through the dirt, his mother's cries echoed across the village. The boy did not fight. He just looked back, his eyes glowing faintly in the night. Not with anger, but with heartbreak. They left him at the edge of the forest, with nothing but the clothes on his back and the memory of his mother's tears. They thought they had ended the curse that night, but what they didn't know was that they had just unleashed destiny. The forest was silent that night, too silent. Even the crickets refused to sing. Adanju walked barefoot through the mud, his clothes torn, his face streaked with ash. Every step felt heavier than the last. He didn't know where he was going, only that he couldn't go back. Behind him, the village lights faded into darkness, and before him stretched a jungle that whispered his name in 100 unseen voices. For the first time in his life, he was truly alone. But fate, it seems, always follows those who try to run from it. As the moon climbed higher, he saw a faint glow deep between the trees. He thought it was fire, maybe villagers still hunting him. But no, this flame was different. It was cold, blue, alive. And when he stepped closer, it moved, swirling in the air like smoke caught in a dream. Then he heard it, a voice soft and ancient. "Do not fear what burns within you, child of fire." He froze. "Who's there?" His voice trembled. The air shimmered, and out of the light stepped an old woman cloaked in mist. Her eyes glowed like dying embers. She was the kind of being old stories warn you about, half spirit, half legend. "I am Ola, keeper of the forgotten flames," she said. "And you are not cursed. You are chosen." Adanju didn't speak. His heart raced, his throat dry. Ola raised her hand, and the blue flame hovered between them. "This is not destruction," she whispered. "It is creation waiting to be understood." She placed the flame in his palm. It didn't hurt. It pulsed, warm, alive, and gentle. For the first time, Adanju didn't feel fear. He felt whole. But peace never lasts long for those born different. Days turned into weeks as he learned from Ola, wandering deeper into the wild. She taught him how to bend the flame, how to feel its heartbeat, how to hear the voice that lived inside the fire. "It is not your gift that scares people," she told him one night. "It's the mirror it holds to their own darkness." He grew stronger, wiser and older. Yet deep inside he missed his mother. Her hands, her voice, the way she whispered his name before sleep. Some nights he would stare at the moon and imagine her still waiting by the broken hut, praying to gods who never answered. Then came the dream, the one that would change everything. He saw his village burning again, but this time it wasn't his doing. Black smoke rose like shadows taking form, and in the middle of it stood a man, eyes red as blood, laughing as Ebo fell into flames. When Adanju woke, the ground beneath him was hot, too hot. Even Ola looked afraid. "It has begun," she said softly. He didn't understand, but her voice trembled with truth. Something dark had awoken, something older than their gods, something that fed on anger and despair. "You were not cast out by accident, child," Ola said. "You were sent away to survive what's coming." That night the forest burned, not from Adanju's hands, but from the shadows rising within it. And as the flames swallowed the trees, Ola's last words echoed in his mind. "You cannot fight darkness with fire alone. You must learn to become the light." He didn't know what that meant yet, but soon he would, because destiny was calling again. And this time it wouldn't whisper, it would roar. Years passed like whispers in the wind. The boy who once trembled before the flames had now become their master. Deep inside the heart of the forest, under Ola's guidance, Adanju learned to listen to fire, not as a weapon, but as a voice. He learned that every spark carried a story, every flame a memory of what once lived. "The fire is not your enemy," Ola would say. "It is your reflection. If you burn with hate, it will destroy. If you burn with love, it will protect." But one morning the forest felt different. The air was heavy, the birds silent. Ola stood by the sacred spring, her eyes dark with worry. "The shadows have grown stronger," she whispered. "They move beyond the forest now." Adanju looked toward the horizon. He could almost smell the smoke. "Ebo," he said quietly. His village, his home. For years he had buried that name beneath silence. But now the dream he saw, the one filled with red-eyed laughter and falling ashes, it was no longer a dream. It was a warning. The same fire that had once been his curse was now calling him back. "You cannot run from where you came," Ola said. "The flame within you was never meant to hide. It was meant to guide." That night, he sat alone beside the old stone where he'd first learned to summon light. He remembered his mother's face, the way her hands trembled when she shielded him from the villagers. He still heard her scream echoing in his dreams. "If I go back," he whispered, "they'll hate me again." But deep down another voice spoke, stronger, older, like the earth itself. "If you don't go back, they'll burn for real this time." He left before sunrise. No farewell, no hesitation. The forest watched him go, silent and glowing faintly, as if the trees themselves bowed in respect. As he walked, fireflies lit his path, tiny stars leading him toward the world he once called home. His heart beat faster with every step closer to Ebo. Would they recognize him? Would they still call him cursed? Or would they see the truth, that the boy they cast out had become the very hope they prayed for? When he reached the edge of the village, he stopped. Everything looked smaller now, quieter. But something was wrong. The air smelled of smoke and fear. Then he saw it. Houses half burned, the marketplace in ruins, and people running, screaming into the night. And standing in the middle of the chaos was a figure cloaked in shadow, its eyes burning red, its laughter shaking the air. Adanju froze. It was the same figure from his dream, the one that haunted his sleep, the one Ola had warned him about. The shadow turned slowly, as if it had been waiting for him all along. "The fire returns," it hissed. "But tell me, child, will you burn for them or burn them all?" For a moment, Adanju couldn't move. The ground beneath him cracked, fire rising at his feet, as if the earth itself demanded an answer. His heart pounded. The villagers screamed his name, some in terror, others in desperate hope. And in that single moment between fear and fury, he realized one truth. This was why he was born. The ground shook as the shadow moved closer. It wasn't walking, it was gliding, like smoke twisting through air. Wherever it passed, the earth blackened, and the fire dimmed as if even the flames were afraid. Adanju stood still, his heart pounding. He could feel the heat building inside him, the same warmth that once made him a curse. But this time, he didn't run from it. He welcomed it. The villagers hid behind walls and broken carts, whispering prayers to gods who had already abandoned them. Some recognized his face, older now but still carrying the same fire in his eyes. "The cursed boy," they muttered. "He's returned." Adanju ignored them. His gaze never left the creature before him. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice steady. The shadow laughed, a sound that felt like a blade cutting through the air. "I am everything they feared in you. I am what they made you believe you were." Its voice echoed, deep and ancient, like it came from inside his own chest. "You carry fire, child. I carry what comes after it. The ashes." Something inside him cracked. He realized then, this wasn't just a monster. It was born from the hatred, the fear, the blame that had chased him since the night of his birth. The shadow was a piece of him, the darkness that grew when love was replaced by pain. Ola's words flashed in his mind. "You cannot fight darkness with fire alone. You must become the light." But how could he become light when everything inside him was burning? The ground split open between them, fire erupting like a living beast. Adanju raised his hands, the flames swirling around him, wild and untamed. The villagers gasped as his entire body glowed, his eyes shining like molten gold. "If you are my darkness," he said, "then today I burn you clean." The shadow lunged forward, its shape twisting into claws and smoke. The two forces collided, fire against void, heat against nothingness. The sound that followed wasn't thunder. It was something older, something raw, the kind of sound that splits the world in half. Flames roared high into the night sky. The ground around them turned to glass. The villagers shielded their eyes as light swallowed everything. For a moment, it looked like Adanju had vanished. But through the smoke, a figure stood, breathing hard, his skin glowing faintly with golden cracks of light. The shadow was gone, or so it seemed. Then a whisper cut through the silence. "You can't destroy what you don't understand." The air grew cold, the fire dimmed, and suddenly the golden light on Adanju's skin began to fade. The shadow's voice echoed again, not outside, but inside his head. "You tried to fight me, but I live in you, child. I always have." He fell to his knees, clutching his chest as pain surged through him. It wasn't physical. It was something deeper, heavier. The fire within him flickered like it was struggling to breathe. Around him the villagers watched in silence, too afraid to help, too awestruck to move. Then from the edge of the crowd a faint cry broke the stillness. "Adanju!" He looked up. An old woman stumbled forward, tears glistening in her eyes. It was his mother, Adawuni. Her face was older, lined with years of grief, but her eyes still burned with the same love that had once defied an entire village. She knelt beside him, holding his face in trembling hands. "My son," she whispered, "you are not your curse." Her touch steadied him. Her words reminded him who he was. The fire that flickered in his chest steadied, glowing brighter once more. And as the shadow's laughter faded into the wind, Adanju rose again. He wasn't done yet. The night was silent after the storm of fire. Only the soft crackle of embers remained, floating in the air like dying stars. Adanju stood there, breath trembling, his mother's hand still on his cheek. For a moment, it felt like the world had stopped. Like the wind, the earth, even time itself was holding its breath, waiting for what came next. Adawuni looked into his eyes, and in that single gaze, he saw everything. The fear, the years of separation, the pain she carried, and the pride she had hidden for so long. "They will never understand you," she whispered, "but you don't need them to. The fire chose you for a reason." Her words felt like warmth spreading through his veins. But beneath that warmth, a familiar chill crept back in. The shadow's voice still whispered inside him, faint but alive. "You can't silence me." "You are me." Adanju closed his eyes. He could feel it, the darkness pulsing deep within, like a second heartbeat. Then he remembered Ola's teaching. Fire consumes, but light transforms. He opened his eyes and something changed. This time, he didn't try to fight the darkness. He reached for it. He embraced it. And when he did, the fire inside him didn't burn. It glowed. His skin shimmered, the cracks of light spreading across his arms like rivers of gold. The villagers, who had once cursed his name, watched in silence. Some fell to their knees. Others wept, unable to understand what they were witnessing. The boy they had cast out was now becoming something beyond their fear, something divine. Adewuni stepped back, awe and tears mixing on her face. "My son," she breathed. Adanju's voice was calm, deeper now, almost echoing. "The shadow was never my enemy. It was my reflection." He raised his hand, and a gentle wave of light rippled through the ground, spreading like sunrise across the ruins. Wherever it touched, darkness melted away, and the charred earth began to bloom with green. The shadow screamed, not in rage, but in release. Its voice scattered like dust in the wind. And for the first time, there was peace. The flames dimmed, replaced by a soft golden glow that lingered around him. The villagers slowly approached, hesitant, their eyes wide with awe. An elder stepped forward, falling to his knees. "Forgive us," he whispered. "We feared what we did not understand." Adanju looked down at them, his expression unreadable. "Fear makes monsters of men," he said quietly, "but understanding turns monsters into mirrors." He turned to his mother and smiled, the first real smile in years. "It's over," but she shook her head gently. "No, my son. It's just beginning." As the first light of dawn crept across the horizon, Adanju raised his gaze to the mountains beyond. There was a calm determination in his eyes. He knew the shadow might never truly disappear. It lived in all hearts, in all lands. But he also knew something else. The fire he carried was no longer a curse. It was a gift, a light meant to be shared. And as he walked away from the village, the sun rose behind him, setting the world ablaze with color. The legend of the boy born of fire had ended, but the story of the Lightbringer had just begun. The night was silent after the storm of fire. Only the soft crackle of embers remained, floating in the air like dying stars. Adanju stood there, breath trembling, his mother's hand still on his cheek. For a moment, it felt like the world had stopped. Like the wind, the earth, even time itself was holding its breath, waiting for what came next. Adewuni looked into his eyes, and in that single gaze, he saw everything. The fear, the years of separation, the pain she carried, and the pride she had hidden for so long. "They will never understand you," she whispered, "but you don't need them to. The fire chose you for a reason." Her words felt like warmth spreading through his veins. But beneath that warmth, a familiar chill crept back in. The shadow's voice still whispered inside him, faint but alive. "You can't silence me." "You are me." Adanju closed his eyes. He could feel it, the darkness pulsing deep within, like a second heartbeat. Then he remembered Ola's teaching. Fire consumes, but light transforms. He opened his eyes and something changed. This time, he didn't try to fight the darkness. He reached for it. He embraced it. And when he did, the fire inside him didn't burn. It glowed. His skin shimmered, the cracks of light spreading across his arms like rivers of gold. The villagers, who had once cursed his name, watched in silence. Some fell to their knees. Others wept, unable to understand what they were witnessing. The boy they had cast out was now becoming something beyond their fear, something divine. Adewuni stepped back, awe and tears mixing on her face. "My son," she breathed. Adanju's voice was calm, deeper now, almost echoing. "The shadow was never my enemy. It was my reflection." He raised his hand, and a gentle wave of light rippled through the ground, spreading like sunrise across the ruins. Wherever it touched, darkness melted away, and the charred earth began to bloom with green. The shadow screamed, not in rage, but in release. Its voice scattered like dust in the wind. And for the first time, there was peace. The flames dimmed, replaced by a soft golden glow that lingered around him. The villagers slowly approached, hesitant, their eyes wide with awe. An elder stepped forward, falling to his knees. "Forgive us," he whispered. "We feared what we did not understand." Adanju looked down at them, his expression unreadable. "Fear makes monsters of men," he said quietly, "but understanding turns monsters into mirrors." He turned to his mother and smiled, the first real smile in years. "It's over," but she shook her head gently. "No, my son. It's just beginning." As the first light of dawn crept across the horizon, Adanju raised his gaze to the mountains beyond. There was a calm determination in his eyes. He knew the shadow might never truly disappear. It lived in all hearts, in all lands. But he also knew something else. The fire he carried was no longer a curse. It was a gift, a light meant to be shared. And as he walked away from the village, the sun rose behind him, setting the world ablaze with color. The legend of the boy born of fire had ended, but the story of the Lightbringer had just begun. The sun had risen higher than ever before, painting the sky in colors the world had forgotten. Gold and crimson danced across the clouds, and the smoke from the village slowly faded into the blue. Adanju walked alone through the fields, barefoot, each step leaving a faint trail of warmth in the grass. He didn't look back. The village was safe now, but his journey wasn't over. In his chest, the fire no longer burned wildly. It pulsed like a heartbeat, steady and alive, in rhythm with the world around him. Birds sang in the distance, rivers whispered through the trees, and for the first time he could hear it, the quiet hum of peace. But peace never lasts forever. He knew that. As he reached the edge of the forest, an old stone stood there, cracked and covered in moss. Strange runes were carved into it, glowing faintly as he approached. Ola had once told him, "The fire inside you is not of this world. It came from beyond the mountains, where the stars fall into the earth." Adanju placed his hand on the stone, and the carvings lit up, swirling like flames trapped beneath the surface. For a brief moment, he saw visions. Cities built of light, shadows rising from oceans, voices calling his name from distant lands. The fire in him responded, flickering brighter, eager to follow that call. He smiled slightly. So this is where it begins again. Behind him, the wind carried soft laughter, his mother's, distant but alive in his memory. Her words echoed through the forest. "Be the light they tried to extinguish." He took a deep breath and stepped forward. The air shimmered, the ground glowing beneath his feet. With each step, the flames around him formed faint wings of light, not of fire, but of pure energy, like dawn taking shape. The camera would rise here, showing the boy, now a man, walking across a glowing path that leads into the mist of the unknown. The voiceover would fade in softly. They feared his fire. They called it a curse. But the truth was never about the fire. It was about the heart that carried it. The light grew stronger, swallowing the frame in brilliance. And as his silhouette disappeared into the horizon, only his voice remained. Every flame begins as darkness, until it learns to shine. The screen fades to black. A single ember flickers, and the legend of the Lightbringer is born.